But we're starting off with a community conversation in North Corktown. It's the neighborhood just north of I-75 and has some different challenges. And our meeting there is part of Detroit Public TV's commitment to going into different communities and listening to the concerns that people have. So we partnered again with Community Development Advocates of Detroit, or CDAD, and headed to Nancy Whiskey Pub for a pretty lively discussion.
We figured, everybody knows where Corktown is. It's that place where they got those really nice little historic houses, Corktown and North Corktown have really different needs.
North Corktown, north of I-75, a lot of urban prairie, so many homes and businesses long gone, but residents here are seeing changes in their neighborhood. They're not far from downtown and so close to the hot Corktown real estate market and Ford's train station renovation. One Detroit and Community Development Advocates of Detroit got together with North Corktown residents at Nancy Whiskey, the neighborhood's only tavern.
Here today, we are going to be just having a free-flowing conversation about the state of the neighborhood here in North Corktown, the perspective of residents or stakeholders. How have you seen the neighborhood change or stay the same in your time here?
I noticed in 2008 that young people like you were pouring in when the rest of the country was suffering from the financial crisis, and that was very interesting to me. It was a good thing.
A lot of things happened in my 58 years. It was nice when I was a kid because it was all filled up with all kind of different types of architecture. Everything was here, and then it went away.
The difference between the blight nowadays, because the developers have an interest in, is market value. You could probably purchase a home for maybe like $250,000, sell your home for $250,000. Whereas when I was growing up in, the 80s and the 90s, you couldn't even give it away,
When I got here, I bought a house and had to do a bunch of fixing up. Big Bob did it for me. But when he did the work, I said, "Did you get a building permit?" He said, "Oh, no, we don't do that." Well, that was 10 years ago. Well, you know what? You got to get a building permit now.
What I've noticed since I've been there is right across the street, I think there's plans to build a house. I also think my landlord wants to build another house right next to where I'm at. So I'm very aware that things are changing quickly.
Most of us are homeowners, and as a homeowner, that's a good thing because the property value has gone up, but you also have to consider the taxes.
I don't know if it's the elephant in the room or the shadow from the train station. There's definitely a microscope on Corktown, and I'm sure North Corktown as well.
We already started making change before Ford came on. We were already on our way, and Ford just blessed us with a little more. The only thing I've noticed more of is notes on my door, do I want to sell my home?
We need to control development as a community and really guide the city's process and demand what we want to see here. And one of those critical components is the open space. And that's one of the reasons I ended up here, because growing up in suburban monoculture out in the exurbs, I had a lot of open space as a child. That's the thing that is one of the precious jewels of the neighborhood.
I hope that North Corktown becomes an example for urban redevelopment throughout the country. And when I say urban redevelopment, it's totally different from gentrification, where people move in and change the entire neighborhood. Urban redevelopment that I'm referring to is you develop the neighborhood around the neighbors that are there, and everyone else will come.
There is a lot happening in this part of the city, and you can understand people's concerns. So let's bring in Nolan Finley from the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson from WDET Radio to take a look at this, plus some of the week's headlines. Hey guys, how are you?
Good, good.
It's good to see you. I was at this meeting in North Corktown, and people were really passionate, but you're hearing a lot of the same things as other meetings that we've been to in the city, and neighborhood identity, concerns about development. One thing that was really interesting that people brought up, they're very excited at the prospect of Ford coming into the old train station.
Yeah, no, they should be there because Ford is making such a big investment and will cast such a big shadow. That investment will cast such a big shadow that there will be benefits in that neighborhood for sure, right? The real question is, how far does Ford not go, right? Where does that kind of end? At the same time, change is scary when you live someplace, when you're invested in it, and when new people come in and kind of decide that they should have as much say about things as you do. We're not great here in Detroit at respecting that and giving people the voice they should in their communities to be able to protect against that kind of thing.
And it's that kind of listening and making sure that people have
Well, yeah,
at least
but I
some
mean,
say.
Change also brings opportunity, brings
not for
economic
everybody.
activity, and you know it's fine to say, well, the new folks coming in shouldn't have as much say, or of course they should. I mean, they're coming in, they're bringing their dollars, bringing their energy. This city is transforming. There's no reason people have to be left behind, but there's also no reason folks who are coming in should have their voices shut out or not heard.
But I think what people are also talking about is when you're talking about development and you're talking about housing, you're making sure that there's housing that's still available for all kinds of income levels.
Yeah, and let's be clear, there's no city that's great at that, right? Every city that's gone through this has seen poor people pushed out, and what that means in most of those cities is that black people and Latinos get pushed out. I think we have an opportunity to do better here, and because this is such an overwhelmingly majority city, we have an obligation to try to do that, to make sure that people who have stayed with the city through all of the craziness that has gone on here and have not left, that's its own kind of investment that deserves to be recognized. Money is not the only thing that's valuable when you're talking about community change, and you have to have somebody in these places to make that argument, to have that voice. Too often in these neighborhoods, the people who live there are not organized enough to have that voice for themselves. So it's really up to the city to figure out other ways to get that voice heard.
And they were pretty organized, though, at this table.
You know, there's a lot of room in Corktown. There's a lot of vacant land. There's a lot of room for everybody. And throughout the city, there's far more affordable housing than there is upper income housing, the housing that's going to fatten your tax coffers. You've got to have more economic diversity in the city, and we don't have that now.
You do, but the tension is that if you create that in places where people right now have affordable housing, the fear is that it pushes them out, that the taxes get pushed up beyond what they can pay, that the neighborhood changes in a way that they don't feel welcome. You got the city is the organization, the institution that is supposed to mitigate those things. We have done a bad job of it in the past. The Duggan administration, I think, is a little more focused on it than some of the past administrations, but we can always do better. The affordable housing that's available in the city, by the way, most of it is substandard, and that's another problem, right? You have people renting places that are not up to code. You have people living in houses that they can't afford to keep up anymore. I think one of the things that we want to look at is how can all this new investment help those people live better in the neighborhoods where they have stayed.
Well, there should be jobs created at all levels. It's not just Ford coming in. There'll be a lot of other businesses coming in. There'll be a lot of economic opportunity. It's not like some other places or other cities where they're bulldozing neighborhoods. You don't have to bulldoze anything in Corktown because a lot of it's been bulldozed already. There's just a lot of space and a lot of opportunity there, and there's no reason why you have to be fearful that it's a zero-sum game. I mean,
not
it's
fearful,
a big pie.
but I think moving carefully.